So, have you ever wondered why some of the absolute most dedicated, passionate superfans just lose all interest the literal second they finally meet their idol? I mean, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? You wait your whole life, you buy all the merch, you finally score that golden meet and greet ticket, and then, poof, the magic just completely evaporates. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the exact psychology behind this sudden drop-off and look at why expectation pretty much never perfectly aligns with reality when it comes to celebrity worship.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think back to the absolute height of the Twilight frenzy. Actor Robert Pattinson had some of the most intense superfans on the planet for sure. But he actually noticed a super-specific pattern among them. He observed that some fans seemed to just quote-unquote wake up after actually coming into contact with him. It's kind of like breaking a spell. The fan isn't angry, they aren't feeling betrayed, they're just suddenly awake. And that feverish obsession, totally gone. But what is actually going on in our brains when this happens?
Well, over in pop culture, especially in Asian entertainment circles, this whole thing is often called defanning or tuo fin. Now, to be clear, this is absolutely not about suddenly hating the star. You're not becoming a troll or a hater. Instead, it's this massive psychological gap between what the fan expected and the actual reality they just bumped into. It's basically the silent little crash that happens when this huge, perfect monument of imagination collides with the plain old ground of reality.
Let's look at Section 1, Shattering the Perfect Filter, the loss of mystery and the reality of flaws.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Think about the distant celebrity. This is the person you only ever see on a massive movie screen, or in perfectly lit photo shoots, or, carefully curated social media posts. They're mysterious, they seem flawless, and here's the kicker. Your brain is actually working overtime to fill in all the blanks using your own imagination. You are basically interacting with a human filter. But then contrast that with the close-up celebrity. Suddenly, they're just a human being who's ordinary, flawed. Maybe they look a bit tired, or they're just completely unremarkable in how they actually act. The contrast there is just massive.
So when a fan finally gets close to a star, they get hit with this real person reality check. They suddenly see someone who is, frankly, ordinary. Someone who has normal physical or behavioral flaws, who has unpredictable moods, and who is simply not perfect. And what we really have to remember here is that initial, super intense attraction. It relies heavily on the unknown. Mystery is a massive, massive driver of infatuation. So the literal second a fan sees clearly, like maybe they just noticed the star awkwardly clearing their throat or looking kind of bored while checking their phone. That magnetic, intoxicating mystery is instantly destroyed by just the completely mundane reality of being a human.
Which brings us to Section 2, the boundary reality check, facing the limits of parasocial relationships.
Now, this is usually where the absolute deepest heartbreak happens for a superfan. If you look at this comparison, you can see the huge disconnect. Subconsciously, right, when you spend years and years supporting someone, you kind of expect a two-way street. You want to be remembered, you want to be valued, you want to feel incredibly special when you finally meet them face to face. But the star's professional reality is entirely different. Their job literally requires them to be polite but distant. They're facing massive, endless crowds of people, so their interactions just have to be highly scripted and routine. It is a strictly one-way street, and it's professionally managed.
And this connection fall-off, it happens so fast. Let's walk through it. First, the fan walks in anticipating intimacy, thinking, oh my gosh, this is my big moment. But instead, step 2, they experience a polite, practiced routine. The star gives them the exact same thank you so much that they've probably said 1,000 times already that afternoon. Instantly, for step 3, that whole illusion of a unique bond is shattered, and the fan feels, well, not special. And finally, realizing they're just another face in the crowd fundamentally weakens that sense of closeness. And just like that, the connection is completely lost.
Moving right along to Section 3, Projection and Mismatched Values, when the person doesn't match the persona. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it gets into the absolute deepest psychological layer of all this, which is overprojection.
You see, fans tend to engage in some seriously heavy overprojection. They basically map their own ideal personality right onto the star, only to discover a completely differing personality when they meet in reality. The fan projects their own emotions, their own moral compass onto the star, only to find out they have completely different, maybe even conflicting views. They build up these super specific expectations for how the star lives, only to uncover a clashing lifestyle behind closed doors. And because the fan essentially used the star as a blank canvas for their own ideals, discovering this actual independent human being feels a lot like being cheated.
Even though, if we're being fair, the star never actually promised to be that perfect ideal in the first place.
So, discovering these mismatched values isn't just a minor letdown, it's a critical system failure for the fandom. Finding out that the star's views, their lifestyle, and their personality differ so greatly, it triggers a massive, fundamental reevaluation of the whole concept of liking them. It literally forces the fan to stop in their tracks and ask, wait a second, if they don't share my values, and they aren't at all the personality I thought they were, then what exactly have I been supporting all these years? The whole foundation of the relationship just collapses.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 4, Imagined versus Real Love. This is the ultimate takeaway of defanning, really summarizing that whole psychological journey from distant admiration to close-up reality.
So the crucial point is that ultimately, as a superfan, you love the imagined version of them, not the real person. You fell in love with this carefully crafted composite of PR, great lighting, good acting, and frankly, your own intense desires. When you finally get close enough to see the real person and the overlap between your imagination and reality is just completely insufficient, defanning isn't a betrayal at all. It is a totally natural, logical, psychological response. It's really just your brain correctly identifying that the thing you loved didn't actually exist in the real world. So don't be too hard on yourself if this happens to you.
I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought today. Take a quick second to reflect on your own favorite celebrities or influencers or idols. The next time you find yourself obsessing over someone you've never actually met, who are you really loving? Are you loving them, or are you just loving a really beautiful reflection of your own expectations? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.